Okay. All right, let us stand for a word of prayer. If anyone would like to lead us in a prayer, followed by the pledge, appreciate it. All right, Dr. Blue.
Dear God, we thank you for this day, God. Thank you, God, for allowing us to see this day, God. We ask you, God, that you continue to bless our school district, God, our leaders. God, we ask you to help us to have a good meeting tonight, God. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. I will pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Meeting has been called to order, and welcome to the Monday, October the 5th, 2020 school board meeting with participants present. School board members Carol Gibson, Bart Alford, Reggie Daniels, virtually school board members present Susie Williamson and Sharetta Bell. Also present is Board Attorney Tommy Reeves, Superintendent Joseph, Isaac Goyette, Ms. Becky Bishop, Dr. Travis Blue, Mr. Michael Vincent, and Ms. Clara Floyd. All present. Did I miss anyone? Got everybody? Okay. All right. First of all, amendments to the agenda. We're going to pull a few items to the consent agenda portion of the agenda, and also we'll pull one down to the, by recommendation, down to the items for individual consideration. So under the amendments to the agenda, items 2.1, 2.2, but 2.1 School Health Services Plan, 2.2 Contract with Allied Instructional Services, 2.3 Fundraisers, 2.4 Staff Trip, and 2.6 Contract with Nancy Hall be pulled down to the consent agenda items. And item 2.5 will be pulled down to items for individual consideration. That's 2.5 will be down, request for use facilities, 2.5 items for individual consideration. All right.
3.4,
I missed 2.4.
4.4.
Oh, yeah, and also 4.4, that's right. We're going to pull that off of the agenda altogether for the time being. The Skyward contract renewal pulled from the agenda altogether. All right, public comment. Mr. Isaac, do we have any?
Just in person.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Vincent?
Easier to talk about fine.
Okay, you,
Who wants to make public comment that's in person?
No, I'm just saying we didn't have any virtual public comment.
oh, okay, I
I'm sorry,
misunderstood you. I'm sorry
I
about
thought you were
that.
saying there was somebody.
Yeah, I did too. Okay, sorry about that.
I can say it's going very well.
All right, no public comment for the record. All right, consent agenda items. We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
All right. Have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. Would there be a need for discussion? All in favor? Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
Also approved 5-0. Motion carried. Consent agenda items have been adopted. All right, items for individual consideration. 5.1 financial reports. Ms. Joseph.
Okay, we have Mr. Vincent, our contracted finance person, and he's going to present the financial reports for tonight.
All right, Mr. Vincent, floor is yours.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you.
I know it was by popular demand. I'm sure you enjoyed the last presentation so much. Which one is actually first? Is there's two reports? Is there two separate agenda items? Or is there? Okay, all right. Basically, and I know you guys have seen this before, but I'll go through kind of similar to what I did with the budget, just to describe what I'm looking at, what we're doing, what we worked on. The ESC 348, the report of financial data to the commissioner, that's going to be mainly your detailed information on your ending fund balances and your statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance. A lot of the same stuff is going to be in the AFR, which we'll look at next, so I won't go too detailed into that. But if you flip through, I guess you can see it on your screen. The first thing you have is your general fund. Gives you a lot more detail on the types of revenues you receive, breaks them up into general categories, federal, state, and local. And then following that, you'll see the expenditure breakdown, which breaks it down by function level, which is the purpose of the expenditure, and by object, which is what the actual expenditure was. And then the other financing sources and changes in fund balance, that's the third page for the general fund, and that will show you a breakdown of the fund balance. The AFR will give you a little better breakdown of what the fund balance consists of. So then if you continue to go through, you'll come across a special revenue food service fund. That one is not what is considered this year a major fund, so you won't see it individually broke down on the AFR. So this is where you'll get the information on your food service. Of course, food service is primarily your federal reimbursement, national school lunch program, school breakfast program, and a lot of other things. I noticed Miss Iris does an excellent job of securing funding for the food service program. And then the following page will give you a breakdown of the expenditures and the fund balance. Of course, I know the district's been making a concerted effort to spend the food service funds wherever possible, and that has shown the fund balance is still healthy, but it did go down a little bit, and that's what we want. We don't want to, hoard too much in federal dollars, and I believe there was a question about that in the past, so I'm going to look back and put Ms. Claire on the spot. I told her just do this. Okay, then you have your other federal programs, special revenue funds, other federal. That's most of all your pass-through grants, your Title I, your IDEA, Perkins, some of your adult ed federal funding, Title II, little things like that. Those grants, your revenues and expenditures always match in these funds, so you're never going to end up with a fund balance. Fund balance will always be zero. Then you've got some really detailed information on debt service funds and capital project funds. Your big debt service fund, that is a major fund, so you'll see it broken out on the AFR over here. That's where your quality or your qualified school construction bonds, the debt service is taken care of out of them. And I'll mention them briefly again when I get on the AFR. So. Capital project funds, we can talk about them on the AFR. Let's see. What this goes down into, the DOE likes a lot of extra information on your sub-object expenditures and the way you spent money. Okay, I know what I'll get to. If you look on page, the way this printed out, I can't really see the page number. I think some of it got cut off. Well, I can't see, there's a whole bunch more over here, but I can't see it because it's printed off in portrait instead of landscaping. But if you can see it online, you should be able to see on page, probably around page 16 or 17, I'm guessing, schedule of categorical programs.
Is this the AFR or the?
This is the 348, the report of financial data. I just don't know what page it is because
What are we looking for at the top? What's the,
schedule of categorical programs.
oh, okay. That's page 18 on mine.
Okay, yes. Like I said, all I can see is the, the unexpended June 30th, 2019 numbers
Well,
here
just
on
take
this.
mine.
You sure?
Yeah, absolutely. You need it more than I do.
Thank you. Thought you were taking notes on this, but.
Well, I was, but.
Okay, and this just gives you a breakdown, set it like this. Of the categoricals that the state allocates to the district. And it shows you what was unexpended, what was brought forward from the prior year, the revenues you received, what you were allocated in the current year, and then what you spent, and then what you're going to be rolling forward to the next year. Those numbers primarily constitute the amount of restricted funding in the general fund that we'll see when we get on the AFR. So that's a lot of the restricted funding you'll see, restricted for categoricals, it'll call it. That is what this is, the funds that you have to roll forward to the next year. So your reading allocation, instructional materials, we have to track those, and they have to be restricted because they can only be spent on certain things. So I think that's all. I mean, they want a breakdown of your sub-object expenditures, like materials and supplies. They want to know how much of them are technology-related materials and supplies. Same with the rentals, technology-related rentals. They really got excited about technology-related objects a couple of years ago. And so that's all there really is to discuss in this report. Matter of fact, I think the last page, and it was portrait, it was meant to be portrait, so it came out correctly. The very last page, Exhibit K-17, page 25, this is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this shows all the federal funds that you guys received in the 1920 fiscal year. And it breaks it down into certain clustered programs, and then it has, by the federal grantor pass-through agency that you got it from. So child nutrition cluster, those funds come through United States Department of Agriculture, and they flow to us through FDACS, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. So they cluster those at the top. Special education, that's your IDEA funds. Then there's some unclustered food service funds. And then you have a lot of the individual grants down here, Title I, migrant. So you can look at this year over year and see changes in those funding sources and kind of see what's going on. Most of these things are probably come to the board's agenda, the awards for approval every year, so you could see it. So that was my attempt to make that document interesting. Do you have any questions about the 348? Okay, then we will talk about the AFR, and I'm going to bring Mr. Reese's iPad, I guess.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, the annual financial report. This is a little more my speed. If you turn over to the third page, you'll have management's discussion and analysis. This is the one part of the document that's really our management's take on what's happened in the district throughout the year. A lot of it is there's a template for some of this stuff, but you do add in things that matter specifically to your district. You see the financial highlights. It says that June 30th, 2020, assets deferred outflows exceeded the liabilities deferred inflows by $32,130,229. That number we'll see in a minute is the district's net position. The net position increased by $440,000 over the previous year. You've got a breakdown of some of the general revenues versus your specific revenues that are attributable to a specific function of the district. We'll see more about that in a minute. Here's what everyone wants to know. I know Ms. Joseph already stole my thunder. She and Ms. Floyd and the employees here get the credit for it. I do not. But the general fund assigned and unsigned fund balances, were 10.44% of the general fund revenues. And, legally, state law requires us to be at 3%. I don't know if the board has a policy.
5%.
The board has a policy, well, so you're definitely, a lot of that, it comes from the savings, probably from attrition and I put some language in here actually, but the cost saving measures related to, staff. We're a school district, when you have major shortfalls or budget deficits, it's salary, that's the only, that's it, you can try to do a lot of different things, but it comes down to salary. So that's good news for the district. And hopefully, we can keep that going. Hope you don't mind if I say we. I'm used to saying we. And then there's some more information, which is just a background on how these statements are created and presented. I will talk about that when we look at the exhibits. So let's do that. Let's go over to page 2, I guess, which is the statement of net position. It's like my page numbers might not be very good. So it looks like this. These numbers are very small. So the way that these statements are created and the way they're presented, they're in 2 different formats. The fund statements are how governmental agencies, local governments, state governments operate is through fund accounting. They have what's called a current financial resources measurement approach, meaning they're looking at, it's not cash flow necessarily, it's modified accrual, but it's not cash flow, but it is more about the revenues the government brought in during that year or the flows, the cash flows they brought in and the cash flows that went out. And it's not the same thing as a cash flow statement, but versus the government-wide presentation, which is more equivalent to what a public accounting or public firm would present, which includes long-term liabilities and long-term assets. And the fund statements do not do that. So these statements present it in 2 different ways, and they show a conversion between the 2. So this statement of net position would be what the Governmental Accounting Standards Board considers to be equivalent to a public company's financial statements. So you can see it shows at the top cash equivalents, due from other agencies, a lot of your current assets, and then you see the long-term assets like your capital assets. That's all it is, capital assets and accumulated depreciation. So that constitutes your assets and deferred outflows of resources there, and then your liabilities, they include the long-term liabilities of the district. So any of your obligations under capital lease or bonds payable, installment purchase payable, those things, they show up on the government-wide statements, but they won't show up in your fund statements. And basically the reason that is because in your fund statements, if you were to go out and borrow money and buy buses, let's say you borrowed $1 million and spent $1 million on buses, in that year, you're going to show $1 million of proceeds and you're going to show $1 million outflow for those buses in your fund statements. That's what you're going to see. Your government-wide, you're not going to see that big outflow and inflow. You're going to see an addition to your capital assets, and you're going to see an addition to your liabilities, to your long-term liabilities. So they just present it in 2 different ways. And then there's some conversions we do, which are demonstrated in here to show you how you can reconcile the 2. It is thrilling stuff, as you can tell, and I can see on the looks on your faces, but I thought I would explain it nevertheless. That's why we have two different presentations. There is some pretty good notes in here. If you read it 4 or 5 times, it'll start to make sense. That will demonstrate why that is the way it is. So, okay, so the statement of net position, continuing on the second page of page 2 of page 2. You see your long-term liabilities. They break it down into the portion due within 1 year, the portion due after 1 year, and then you've got deferred inflows of resources, which are similar to liabilities, whereas deferred outflows are similar to assets. Those are all related to your pension obligations, which I'll discuss those in a minute. And then you have your net position, and it shows you the breakdown of your net position. Because you guys have the charter schools are considered component units of the district. Then the next couple of pages, you're going to see the same information we just presented, but it's based on what the charter schools provided to us. I will say that one of the charter schools has provided audited information. One of them, we did not have audited information at the time that we compiled this. So that's very likely to change by the time the auditors do the report for your district. They'll have audited information, so those numbers will be a little different. Statement of activities. The way it presents, this is your government-wide income statement. The former was your government-wide balance sheet. This is your government-wide income statement. It's called the statement of activities. It shows the amount of expenses the district had by function, and it pretty much totals everything that was done in the fund statements, except it removes the effects of any proceeds of loans that you received, any principal payments you made on long-term liabilities, and any money you spent to buy assets. That won't show up in these numbers. And then that's this one, by the way. It's very small, I know. And then you'll see program revenues. They take out revenues, contributions, and grants and things that were specifically for a purpose. So when they say food services, the total expenses in the 7,600 food service function were 1.5 million or so, 1.6 almost. They show any revenues that were directly related to that and that only. So those operating grants, food service grants, were for food service only. So they show that as a offset of the expense. At the very bottom, the rest of this is the revenues for the district, and it shows how the change in net position, 440,000, your beginning net position, and then the net position as of June 30th, 2020. The only time these numbers are ever really compiled and presented is at the AFR at the end of the year. The rest of the time, the district is just concerned with, do we need financing for any specific purpose? Do we make our principal payments on time? Have we recorded any capital assets we purchased in the proper, account code? That's what the district's worried about throughout the year. At the end of the year, after you've accumulated and finalized all your fund statements, then you put together what the government-wide statements are. So starting on page 4, these are your funds. These are the major funds and the accumulation of all the non-major funds, and then those together make the total governmental funds. So that last column on page 4 shows you the balance sheet of the district as of June 30th, 2020. At the bottom, I'll just tell you, there are no deferred inflows and outflows on the fund statements. They're only for your district. They're only in the government-wide. So you have assets and liabilities. The difference between your assets and liabilities is your equity, known as the fund balance here, and it shows you a little more detail how they break down. $177,000 of your fund balance is inventory, and then you have some significant restricted sources for state-required carryover programs. That is things such as, what we discussed, what I showed you earlier, where I showed you what you brought forward from the previous year, what you seed, what you spent, what's left over. That is those numbers. It's also some other state grants like the TSSSA, the Turnaround School Services, T3SA is what I call it, because I can never remember all 3 S's. So that money that you have available to roll forward to the next year, that has to be restricted because it is restricted for a specific purpose. In the total government column, you see capital projects, and you can see from, where that comes from. The majority of your capital project restricted funding is in your local capital improvement fund. I mean, that's always going to be a good problem to have. You have some sufficient resources there in your local capital improvement fund. And those are the funds that are spent from the advertisement that we did during the trim hearings, the capital outlay advertisement, where you advertised all those projects. Those are the projects allowed to be spent out of that allocation. Next page is just the reconciliation that I talked about between your balance sheet and your government-wide net position. I won't discuss any of that. Sir?
Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
If I can. But when it's got the FRS pension liability and the HIS pension liability, are those actual liabilities? I mean, if the Florida retirement system goes under, we don't owe money, do we?
No, well, that's that, and I was looking at this. This was when I was an auditor. That was one of my first questions. A lot of our questions was, why does this even matter?
Right.
My understanding is, and everything I've researched and asked, my understanding is the only thing the district is ever responsible for are contributions that are required by law
Your yearly
going forward.
contribution that you.
Right, we've given that to the state. I don't understand why you have, so if you'll notice back in your net position, and I won't turn back to it, I know y'all probably hope you'd never hear about that again, but you see your net investment in capital assets is a large number, and then you'll see some other different investments and restricted funding sources. Then you'll see an unrestricted number that's like a very large negative number. This is because of a Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement 68 a few years ago decided that it was going to take the liability, statewide liability for the pension of state governments and distribute them out to all the local governments. So it ends up saying that your district has a large liability for pensions, but the district doesn't actually owe that money for pensions.
I mean, that was kind of the whole concept of the Florida retirement system.
Yeah.
We were going to pay in, they were going to manage it, they're
Right.
responsible. What is the HIS net pension? What is that?
That's the health insurance subsidy.
Oh, okay.
It's an obligation to pay, was it up to $150 that they pay retirees?
I got you.
So it's just another part. And so anything they're saying they're obligated to do, then you must record a present liability or present value of the future liability.
I got you.
And then the other, I was going to talk about these briefly when we got to the end, which I was going to skip. I'm not going to go through every page in here. But we'll bring those up again we'll really just close it out strong. So your page 6, your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. That's what it is. It shows how we came to the, it shows your beginning fund balance, what your change in fund balance was for the year, and then how you got to your ending fund balance. And it breaks it down, federal, state, local revenues, shows your property tax revenue. And then it shows the functional expenditures, any debt service that you spent. So here's what I was mentioning earlier in the fund statements. We show, the payments on that principal as an expense. And in the government-wide statement, it shows it as a reduction to the liability. So there's just a little bit difference. Really, the difference is between your long-term assets and liabilities between the two categories, types of statements. And then another reconciliation between your statement of revenues, changes, I can't remember what it's called, revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance to the statement of activities. So, all right, let's move on. There's a little bit more about component units in the exhibits, and there's one statement of net position for the fiduciary funds, which is in your internal accounts. And that's on page 11. That just shows your ending, most of that's going to be cash, and then offsetting accounts, internal accounts payables for the money they owe to the agent, to the different clubs and sponsors and whatnot. So moving past the exhibits, in the notes section, these are required note disclosures. They do give a lot of good information if you're, interested. See our major fund statements, it describes them on page 18.2. The way they determine what a major fund is, general fund and special revenue other are required to be major. The other funds are determined based on the percentage of their assets and/or liabilities and/or expenditures and/or revenues. Any of those, it's their percentage of that in that fund that's attributable to the whole. So if they have more than 10% of expenditures or revenues, they're considered a major fund for that year. I think it's more than 5 or 10%, I can't remember which one, for the assets and liabilities. So see if there's anything else. Page 1811. This is the changes in capital assets for the year. It's going to show you, the beginning balance from the prior year, any additions you had. So your fund statements will show those additions as capital outlay expenditures. And then when they get moved to the government-wide, they were removed from the expenditures and they become additions to your assets. And then you have your annual depreciation, additions, deletions. There was some property that was deleted this year. So the amount of the asset and the accumulated depreciation was the same, so they just balanced each other out. And then you come up with your ending capital asset balance. And on the statement of net position where we had the net investment in capital assets, that's going to be your net capital asset balances minus any of the long-term liabilities are specifically for, related to capital assets, which would be your installment purchase payable for buses, the obligations under capital lease for, IT equipment. Those things are considered to be reductions in the net investment in capital assets. All right, there's a lot of stuff here about FRS, your pension, your HIS, your OPEB. I thought I would just do this. If you go all the way over to page 18.24, and we're almost done, you're going to have a description of the long-term liabilities. Your bonds payable, that's your qualified school construction bonds. Those are funds that are owed for projects of which I am not sure because it's back in the days of R from like 2010 when these projects were done. Does anybody know what they were for?
High school, what we call high school envelope.
Yeah,
Okay.
the renovation of the high school. Let me ask you this, we've got, the rates are considerably lower now. Should we be looking at refinancing those bonds? They're at 3.3 and 5.3.
The rate, well, one of them is almost satisfied.
One's paid out in 2021.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
The other one you've been getting an interest subsidy on every year, so you pretty much haven't paid any interest. I don't know much more about them
What's an interest subsidy?
than that. The federal government is, because there's some bonds that are qualified that, they're tax exempt, so you get a lower rate because of that.
Yep.
Those, the higher rate is related to not qualifying for that, but somehow, and I really don't have familiarity with those QSCVs, but somehow you qualify for the IRS to give you a rebate. So they return most of that interest you pay on those, it comes back to you every year. So you really don't pay, yes, very little interest on that. And we found the original resolution in the documents on that, so we could share that with you. That's all I really know from looking at it, is that's why the higher rate is there, because the interest is mostly paid by.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have
No.
a higher rate.
Right.
Okay.
And then you have the payment schedule over on the next page for those bonds. You see, so I think it's 2027 or 2028, they'll be satisfied. This is the annual maturity to 2027. That 26 through 28 should probably say 26 through 27. I would immediately fire whoever put that in there. So your installment purchase payable That's 877,000 originally financed for the buses, 8 school buses. And you've got 3 payments left on that, 21, 22, and 23.
Do we need to be looking at buying, I mean, I think the thought of that originally was you're gonna finance it, and then every year you'd add a bus or two, and that way you kept them kind of turning over, you know?
Well, you can do that, or you could, I mean, like, we financed, we bought a couple outright, but we did finance because of the limitations on the amount you can finance based on your capital asset proceeds and stuff and what you've already got out there. But we financed 7 buses, and then we bought 3 outright, 2 in 18, 19, 1 in 19, 20, and then we went out and financed 7 more in 19, 20. So our plan is, I think it's a 5-year repayment schedule, is every 5 years to look at replacing 8 or so buses, and that would be a pretty good plan for us. That's probably the way that, you guys want to look at it. I don't know how many buses you have in the fleet or how many, that the transportation needs, but that's a pretty solid way to do it. Instead of trying to buy them outright every year, every 5 years or so, just, go through it and financing. It's pretty common. Obligations under capital lease, those are the principal and interest payments on the data processing equipment and phone system. I can't think of anything exciting to say about data processing equipment and phone systems. That shows 21, 22, and 23. That's your payment schedules. Your changes in long-term liabilities. You have the 3 items we just discussed, the bonds payable, the obligations under capital lease, and the installment purchases payable. The other 3 items are long-term liabilities that they require you to recognize that you normally probably wouldn't even think of in your daily operations. There is a compensated absences payable. That is, because there's a certain amount of money owed out in sick and vacation leave at any given time. So it's a calculation of that because we want you to recognize it as a liability.
So theoretically, if you fired everybody in the district,
Yep.
you'd pay them that amount.
If you ended operations right, that's what you would owe them currently. The net pension liability, that's the combined FRS and health insurance subsidy HIS pension liabilities. It is a exciting and fun read and journey through how those are calculated. Matter of fact, I remember more about it this time because I just had to do it twice. Usually you go through it, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it's not a year again before you do it. And you're like, what was I doing last year? It's most of this is given to you by the state. They give you specific information for your district, and it's determined on your amount of payroll, a lot of different ratios of your payroll to the statewide payroll, and then you take that portion. The formulas tell you belongs to you. That's your liability, your portion of it. And as we said earlier, what I've read on it, they've even told them, yes, you have to report this liability. No, it is not your responsibility. I still don't get how that works, but that is why you see there the ending balance, $13,857,000 something dollars in total liability for net pension. Your other post-employment benefits payable, that's a similar type arrangement where actuaries come in and look at your health situation, your health insurance, what you provide. It's probably better if I just tell you what that, if I read the language on what that liability represents. Retirees and their eligible dependents shall be offered the same health and hospitalization insurance coverage as is offered to active employees at a premium cost of no more than the premium cost applicable to active employees. So the district subsidizes the premium rates paid by retirees by allowing them to participate in this plan at reduced or blended group premium rates. So basically, they're looking at the plan as a whole. The premiums are set based on the demographics and claims experience for everyone involved. The understanding is that retirees are going to have typically going to have higher premium rates than, younger active employees are. But because everybody's based on the same thing, your active employees are paying a higher rate than they would, thereby subsidizing some of the premiums for retirees. These rates provide an implicit subsidy because retiree health care costs are generally greater than active employee health care costs.
So how do they generate the $905,000? What does that mean?
Well, that's a very good question. That's saying that is your liability, which is unfunded. There are no assets set aside for it. Let me see here. These are all actuarial valuations, so they come up with this stuff. They give us the numbers and we put them in. I'm trying to find the best language to explain it to you. And it's also because we continue to offer, I think it would say, because of the board makes contributions to that plan. So the board is invested in how much, they give to employees for that plan. Because the premiums are higher naturally because you continue to fund them to retirees versus just active employees, and you're going to continue to provide it to them after they retire, then there's an obligation related to that long term. That's probably the best way I could put it.
So the 905 is the difference between the premium as it would be without the.
Well, with a whole bunch of actuary, if they take about 7 or 8 different things from the district. They look at your entire healthcare structure, how many employees you have on the plan, how many retirees are active, how many are on Medicare, and they do all this stuff and they give you these numbers, and you have to report those on the statement. That's really what that one.
Because the retirees pay for their own health insurance, so it's not the cost of providing them the health insurance. It would have to be the difference in the premiums due to having them included in the group, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what it amounts to. They just changed that one a couple of years ago too. GASB 75 for anyone who wants to look that up. So that's another obligation of the district that only shows up in your government-wide statements. Doesn't concern most people on a daily basis. And then there's also the fact that certain retirees you have receive insurance at a lower premium rate, receive $100 per month for up to 24 months. Is that correct?
That's part of the retirement package.
Okay, that's a little different than ours, so. All right, so that's the end of the long-term liabilities, and I believe that's the end of most of the fund. There's a few last-minute details in here. It shows you the breakdown of state revenue sources. Any of the interfund receivables and transfers, it shows you what they're for. And I think that's it. And if I'm back to help again next year, I won't spend that much time talking about it unless you want me to. But I just, I figured I had somebody hadn't heard me run my mouth for so long that they might be more interested. Sometimes I get the blank stares, but.
That was very informative.
Oh, well, thank you. The key is the general fund balance is 10.44. I probably could have just said that, huh? So if there's no questions, then.
Okay.
Well, I think you mentioned that 2 weeks ago, that it was 10.44, but then again, we don't know what the future holds.
Right.
If you could reiterate that. In other words, we're not on top
Yes.
of the, we have to be careful with our money.
I've seen it personally that it can go away fast.
Yeah.
Usually it's a lot easier to get rid of or to go bad than it is to turn it around. And I don't know what the staff structure looks like this year. I know these are just unprecedented times. Every district's doing things differently. There were a lot of savings, from last year, but as the kids come back to school, some of these costs are going to have to be reconsidered. The superintendent's well aware of that. So, I feel confident that it can be sustained or can even be built upon, the fund balance as well, so. But yes, I would never take my eyes off the prize there, which is compliance, because they've added even more, regulations on if you fall below that 3%, that they can come in and review books and all that, so.
I want to thank you for all your work, and I just am amazed that we're at the 10.44. Seeing that 18 months ago, we were at, what was our lowest, Ms. Floyd, 1 point? I mean, it's almost hard to believe that we could go up 9 percentage points unless we truly weren't that low at that point. I mean, that's statistically, would make sense that we really weren't at the 1 point, whatever we were at that point.
I'd have to look at, see what last year's was. I mean, I know there was considerable savings this year from the.
No, we
from the
made
staff.
a lot of cuts, but that's a lot of money
Yeah.
to jump, and I'm very thankful we're at the 10% because the TV cameras aren't here at 10%, but they were at the
I'm familiar with that.
they were at the less than 3. They were here camped out each night.
We won't hear about that at 6 o'clock.
No, but we heard it for weeks.
We used to hear from the DOE regularly and other people, and then it just kind of, not that they're not concerned, but there's a problem, people love a problem.
Well, they should be very proud of what it's at now, seeing what it was a few months ago.
Thank you.
Well, thank
for
you
all
all.
that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We need to approve that, right? Okay, information.
I guess it has to be approved.
We were just talking about that.
All right. Having hearing from the financial chief, Mr. Vinson, to report, do we have a motion to approve the financial report?
I make the motion to approve the financial reports.
All right.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Alford, second by Ms. Gibson. Would there be a need for discussion? All in favor, Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
And I also approve 5-0 financial report has been approved. Personnel changes, 5.2, Dr. Blues. 5.2, Dr. Blues.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be very short.
All right.
Brother Chair and Board, I'd like for you to approve 5.2 personnel changes at this time.
I make the motion to approve the personnel changes. Second.
All right, motion by Ms. Williamson, seconded by Ms. Bell. There'll be need for discussion. All in favor, Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
I also approve 5-0, personnel changes approved and adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Chair and Board.
All right. All right, we have a executive piece that we need to take care of as far as personnel, and we'll turn this portion we'll turn it over to the board attorney, Mr. Reeves.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, you've got two letters there. One is directed to Ms. Giacomucci, I think is how you pronounce her name. And these are personnel issues. This letter deals with an issue that happened with that teacher. If you go to the back, you can see that the superintendent has worked out a plan with that teacher, and so that does not require action by the board. You would only take action if it's being brought to the school board by the superintendent. So the superintendent's handled it, y'all don't have to take any action. The other one, it deals with a Ms. Stone, and you'll see the superintendent has a proposed action on the back, but it doesn't have, Ms. Stone hasn't signed off on it yet. What happens is with this, the superintendent is authorized to suspend members of the instructional staff with pay based upon certain charges, that can only happen for 10 days or to the next regular school board meeting, then this board has to decide whether or not that suspension will be with pay or without pay. Now, I believe the superintendent said, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you believe that you've reached an agreement and you believe she will be by and sign it tomorrow.
That's what my plans are, for her to come by tomorrow and sign it.
So I think if you all are okay with that resolution, then you need to approve the resolution and then decide, well, if she doesn't come sign the resolution, then what happens? So you would have to decide that tonight. Now, in the past, the board has, it's up to the board on how you want to extend a suspension like this. As I said, you can do it with pay or without pay. If you do it without pay, and then ultimately there was a challenge and they prevail, you would have to refund them whatever the pay they had not gotten in the interim with interest. If you do it with pay, and then they were ultimately discharged, well, that pay is just gone at that point, and you don't get it back. So, and there aren't a lot of, there isn't any rule guidance. You don't have a rule on how you do this. It's kind of left up to the best judgment of the board.
So what you're saying, we need to approve the agreement?
You need to approve the
Separately?
agreement, and then should she not come by and sign the agreement, then what happens? Would it be suspension be with pay or without pay?
So you approving the agreement pending she signs it?
That's right.
Okay, I make the motion to approve the agreement pending that Ms. Stone signs the agreement. And if she doesn't, I make the motion to be without pay.
And then her, Madam Superintendent, she was, okay, it was September 30, so it would start, the without pay would start
10 days after that?
10 days after September 30. What is that? October 10?
Mm-hmm.
So is that?
Yeah. Okay. I second Mr. Alford's motion.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Alford, second by Ms. Williamson. Will there be a need for discussion? All right, all in favor? Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
And also approved 5-0, motion approved. All right, is that? Yeah, it's good, I got it next, coming up next. Okay. All right, it's going to be 5.3, request to use facilities. Ms. Joseph.
Okay, Mr. Chair and the board, sometime back in late spring, early summer, we had COVID rampant, and in the past, the superintendent could approve an outside entity renting our facility. And we changed that, and so it's at the board approval. So I have before you, someone is requesting the use of the gym on October the 10th.
All right. What shall we hear on the matter?
I think we agree to not outsource the facilities due to COVID. That's where we
I think
stand.
we shouldn't. I think we did too, and
Yeah.
it's not just a cleanup anymore. You've got to do all that disinfecting, and with the COVID exposure.
Yes, we're in different times right now.
Yeah, I think we should suspend on outside activities for the time being.
Yeah, I think we voted on that, didn't we?
What would-
You voted to bring it back to the board, so I think y'all just need to, if that's what y'all want to keep doing, you need a motion to deny the request.
Okay,
I move to approve to continue to discontinue outsourcing our facilities for outside usage.
You were just voting on this one thing, aren't you?
So I think it's just deny the request, right?
Just, okay, I move to,
so we're
Deny
saying
the
we're doing
request.
Case by case
Well,
basis?
wait a minute, let's back up.
well, here.
I think what y'all decided before, because what the superintendent was alluding to was before the superintendent would just approve those. And I think what the board decided before was that y'all weren't going to allow those. And so if anybody did want to use the facilities, it had to come back to y'all, and y'all would decide it on a case-by-case basis. Now, if y'all want to keep doing it that way, I think what you would do is you do a motion to deny this one request. Any new requests have to come back and y'all decide it then. If you don't want to do it that way anymore, if you want to say, no, just superintendent, just tell people we're not leasing them out. Yeah, I think y'all have the ability to do that too. You can do it either way.
So we can make a motion to not outsource right now until further notice.
Until further notice. Now, and I think the reason that wasn't done before is it's hard to anticipate every possible scenario that might come before y'all. And so I think the thought maybe was it was better to look at it on a case-by-case basis, because you may hit one that you do think is appropriate. For instance, if you had one that was specifically aimed at students, if you had some group that was doing some great thing for kids, you might decide that was worth the risk of doing that. But, again, that's a policy decision. Y'all can do it either way.
I mean, my feeling behind this right now is so much extra work that the school is having to do from 8 to 5 on a daily basis, plus to throw in extra weekend work. And like Ms. Williamson said, with all the sanitation that has to go on, I don't see where we need to just concentrate on Monday through Friday with our students at this time. And again, I personally feel at this time we just need to make it where we're not doing it at period until this lifted. I mean, in all reality, we do not even have our whole student body back at school yet, nor teachers. We have people virtual. We have 500 students within the district who are not even attending school. So I think that we need to concentrate on the students we have at school, and maybe at the point where we get everybody back in school and get more back to some normal sense of a school day, then we could look at it at that point. But at this point, I'm afraid that we're going to be asking people to do a lot more extra work by just doing this one event or an event we have out there. That's just my feelings. I don't know how everyone else feels.
I feel the same way, Mr. Alford.
I agree.
All right.
Well, so I guess somebody needs to make a motion.
Yeah, okay. We'll entertain a motion, yeah, either way.
And I think what you could do is you could say to not allow the lease out of facilities while we have the COVID restrictions. I don't know exactly how to say that, but is that?
I'll give it a whirl for the third time now. I move to not outsource our facilities for this period of time until we decide that it's a better time to do this.
Until further action.
Until further action by the board, yeah, okay.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and second. Will there be a need for further discussion?
And like we said, this isn't permanent. In the future, we'll reconsider. Excuse me.
All right, all in favor? Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
And I also approve 5-0. The request at this time has been denied.
And so now, just so we're clear, if someone approaches the superintendent, she's to tell them no, that we're not leasing the facilities out at this time until
The
y'all
COVID.
give some other instructions.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Superintendent items.
okay, I want to update you on our enrollment. We are within the FTE window. It ends Friday. And at this time, we have increased our face-to-face enrollment since the last meeting by 11 students. Our virtual group is kind of, I think that increased by 2. And our innovative approach, that basically, that increased by 3, but we're at 1,300, 1,312 students in face-to-face. That's all of our schools. And we've got 6 more from homeschool. That's what we're trying to capture, kids from homeschool. We've got 6 more students from homeschool.
That came back?
Yes. As for COVID, we've been doing extremely well. Today, we had to quarantine the football team at the central school. It was a positive case at another school, but we had to quarantine them because of contact tracing. And that's it for us. We're just trying to make a go of it.
Okay. Board Attorney Reeves,
Um,
have anything?
Just one thing, and I wanted to make sure y'all remembered, we are in a lawsuit with right of passage on a past performance of the contract. The superintendent and myself and their staff members have gone through, and I think we understand what happened now, and we've got our documents together and presented it. I sent all of that to the attorney for the other side. He has, and we were supposed to have a telephone conference to kind of go through it. He's had some back issues and that kind of thing, so that's sort of on hold for right now. But I think we got to a good place, at least on our side of understanding. One of the big challenges in that case was during all this time that we changed chief financial officers and all of that, and it was just a very challenging kind of case to put together exactly how the money flowed and how it was calculated and everything. But I think with a lot of hard work, I think we've done that now, so we're in a good place. But hopefully I'll have some good news for us next time we talk about it. But other than that, I don't have anything to report unless y'all have questions.
All right. All right, Ms. Gibson.
Yes, I'd like to address something briefly that I actually addressed the board when I was not on the board, and I actually addressed it as a board member. It's regarding, let's say specifically teachers. I'm not aiming this at any one particular teacher, but teachers or anyone that's actually connected with the school system should be very mindful of their behavior, their role, because they are role models for the children, first and foremost. Many of these children do not have good role models, so the teachers are right there front and center. I was thinking possibly the principals can also sit their faculty down and remind them of some do's and don'ts. I know it sounds ridiculous, but maybe some people would benefit from it. Just touching on that.
All right.
Thank
That's
you.
it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Alford.
I would like to thank, again, Ms. Joseph for her continued hard work, for the finance office and their hard work, for helping us to reach our fund balance to what it is, all the principals, teachers, and staff within the district. I too would like to touch on just how we act at school, how we act around the children. I would like to say that I've had the opportunity to have had professional teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade here in Madison County, and then at Florida State and in graduate school. And I simply wish this for all the students in our district, to have the same experience I've had. And unfortunately, at this time, I feel with some, they're not having it. And as board members, I feel that we need to help ensure that all teachers step up and do the right thing, or maybe not teach anymore, because the students in this district deserve the best they can get. And as a teacher, you represent the school and you set an example for your students, the school and the community. It is important to set a good example at all times. Every time you do what is right and act ethically, it helps ensure the next generation, our students, will do the same and help to mold the school environment and culture. With that being said, I personally think that we've discussed this at times concerning ethics, and I know the teachers have had in-services in ethics probably yearly. I don't know what else we can do as board members to ensure that people do the right thing. I do think that as a board, we need to take a look at our use of social media policy for all employees, relating to all the social medias we have today. Back 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when I came on the board, we didn't have all the social medias we have, and unfortunately, it's very tempting for teachers to engage in that with students, and it's not right. It's ethically wrong. It's wrong on many fronts, and I, as a board member, I'm tired of being faced with this in the community, of people coming up and showing me things on different media fronts that have students that are basically being exploited, in my opinion, and it's not right, and it needs to stop. And I think that as a board, we've been more than fair. Ms. Joseph's been more than fair and accommodating to teachers, and I feel that it needs to come to an end, and we need to have some strict wording in our policy that we've given the warning tonight, and Ms. Joseph has given the warning when she has them sit down for ethics training, that if you continue to do this after the district has said not to do it, then that should be grounds for termination. And I would like to see us address that policy. And in the future, I mean, it's not fair to the students, and I'm their advocate, and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of people not being professional. We don't hire teachers to be students' friends. They have friends on the school campus. We hire them to be an adult. And so at the next meeting, I would like for us to look at the social media policy and possibly to decide which direction we would like to go, because it has got to change. I mean, it's got to be where teachers act like teachers and not like students. And that's all I have to say about it. And again, whatever has happened, we just need to move forward as a district, and I feel this is the best way we can move forward, is to set policy. And, you know, some people might think it's harsh, but the kids deserve to have people who are being instructors in their classroom. That's all I have to say.
How do we begin that? How do we begin the process?
Well, we have a policy. We just need to look at the policy.
And just look at it?
And see what, and look at the different things with the social media, because again, it is constantly changing, where there's all these platforms, and I mean, I thought we had to have, I mean, our policy is pretty clearly stated about what you should and shouldn't do. I do know that some teachers want to showcase their students, and I want that. But no student should be showcased unless their parent has given consent to the district. And I feel it should be done on a district's platform, either Facebook or a district page. And I feel the principal should approve anything that goes on that platform. We shouldn't be sending stuff out on our personal accounts. It just opens up the teacher for a lot of things that could make them lose their license. And again, I'm trying to look after the teacher too on this, because again, I went through a training back probably 2 years ago with an attorney for the FEA who spoke to our teachers, to the teachers in Perry, and she specifically said she was there who represents teachers when they have charges brought against them. And I mean, she specifically said, do not put this on there, because you're opening yourself up for huge professional practice type issues. But again, I think we have the policy in place. It's just making people realize that we mean what we say, and not you can just do whatever you want to do. And again, I don't want to fire anybody, because we need teachers. But again, as a board member, I can't sit here and continue to have people put whatever they want to on Facebook that's degrading children in our district. I can't do it. So if people get fired because of it, then we've warned people not to do it. And if they choose to do it, then that's them. I mean, Ms. Joseph has warned them. We've had in-services this year on ethics, haven't we?
Yes, we have the ethics training, and we have the signature page to prove it.
So, So again, I don't know what else to do as a board other than us do nothing and continue to have people do it, and we just have to take it, but I'm not going to sit here and do that. So I don't know what our next step is.
Okay, you mentioned you had an attorney present in Perry, though. I mean,
We
maybe
had
we need to.
someone, FEA had someone, but Ms. Gibson, I don't know that that's doing that because we're giving people the training. We've got to have it in policy that if you do this, this is going to happen.
Well, it's got to be enforced too.
We
Every,
will bring our policy back and see with social media changing and evolving every day, we need to make sure that our policy has evolved with social media. And so we can start there.
You may want to look and see if, some other districts and see what,
Yes.
Duval County's doing and Alachua County's doing in these bigger districts and just get some more ideas.
But things changing every day. I
Right.
can't keep up with it. And
I'm
Lou,
not-
will you pull that policy and have it at the next board meeting, whatever policies we have that relates to social media?
I'm not on any social media, but I do know that probably when we first did our social media policy, probably TikTok has come about, and there's other things that have come about that the kids are using, teachers are using. And again, am I saying that that's wrong? No, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I am saying it's wrong when you don't do it under the school's umbrella and parents do not know it's being done and your principal does not know, and it's being done on the teacher's part and there's inappropriate things appearing on that webpage. That's when it's really wrong. I mean, it's a great way to market the school. It's a great way to market your class. But I just feel that we need to do it where the principal always knows what's going out from their school. Because no video should be made in a school classroom that's inappropriate. Because at that point, suddenly this board has been drug into that inappropriate video. But I would appreciate it, Ms. Joseph. And again, I'm not trying to be on a soapbox, but I do feel that for the good of the district and our students, and for us, we're being thrust into something that we have nothing. I mean, we had no part in, and we're having to answer to why this is happening, and we can't say it. I mean, we don't, other than it shouldn't be.
All right, well, next board meeting, we'll try to get the process to started to revisiting the social media policy.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Williamson?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Alford that we need to have policies to spell out exactly what we expect. But I do want to say that the majority of our teachers are fine examples for the children and a good role models. And those few that maybe don't understand what we expect of them, we need to tell them.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bell?
I would like to say I'm happy with our fund balance. I would like to say thank you to the staff for their dedication to our students. And please continue to keep our students moving forward and staying safe. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I just wanted to just commend the district, everybody that makes up the district who've been doing a remarkable job as far as the COVID situation. I'm going to be totally honest, y'all have exceeded my expectations on that. And I thought the numbers would be, far, worse than they are or whatever. But I think we've got a grip of things, or somewhat got a better understanding of it. And the quarantines and the processes that we have in place is, I think everything is working out pretty good. So I really, really commend all of the district for a job well done as far as the COVID safety precautions. And I hope the family who wanted to rent the space understand, and I'm sure they will. When we made that decision, it's also to help protect the family as well. So and we've been doing a remarkable job of keeping the school and the students and staff safe. And we just wanted to ensure that continues. So I commend everybody for doing a wonderful job on that front. All right, with that said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All right, second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, Ms. Gibson?
Approve.
Mr. Alford?
Approve.
Ms. Williamson?
Approve.
Ms. Bell?
Approve.
I also approve 5-0, meeting adjourned.